Story 1. I was in Baton Rouge for a 3-day work conference last fall. I'm a marketing consultant, and my company had booked me into a modest but clean hotel just off the interstate. Nothing fancy, but it had a continental breakfast and decent reviews. I flew in late on a Thursday and didn't have time for much except ordering room service and setting an early alarm. I remember feeling weirdly tired that night. Like jet lag, it hit harder than usual, even though it was just a 2-hour flight. I double-checked the deadbolt before getting into bed, something I always do when I travel alone, but didn't think much of it. It was just another work trip. Same rental car, same PowerPoint, same corporate pleasantries. It was a little after midnight when I heard the banging. Not knocking, banging like someone was throwing their whole weight against the door. At first I thought it was the room next to mine, but when I sat up and listened, it was clearly coming from my door. I froze. It was that instinctual fear, like something primal in my chest just lit up. A woman's voice followed fast and panicked. "Please, please, open up. He's gonna kill me." I hesitated. Everything in me said not to move, but the way she said it, raw, breathless, like she was really running from someone, it cut right through the fear. I cracked the door with the latch still on, and there she was, barefoot, hair matted with sweat, makeup smeared down one side of her face. She couldn't have been older than 30. "Please, just let me in. My ex found me. He's here." I saw him watching my window. She kept glancing behind her, like she expected someone to lunge out of the darkness. I didn't think. I just undid the latch and let her rush inside. She immediately locked the door behind her and pressed her back against it, catching her breath like she'd just sprinted a mile. I asked her if she'd called the cops, and she shook her head. No signal. I tried. "Can I just stay here for a little while, just until morning?" I didn't sleep after that. She introduced herself as Jenna. She said she had checked into the same hotel earlier that day after leaving her apartment 2 towns over, claiming her ex-boyfriend had been harassing her 4 weeks. Her hands trembled as she talked. "And I noticed a cut on her forearm," she said, "came from trying to climb out of her bathroom window." I offered her a bottle of water and asked again if she wanted me to call the police, but she said no. "Too risky," she told me. "If he knows I talked to the cops, he'll do something worse." It didn't sit right with me, but she looked so scared that I didn't push it. I just figured I'd stay up and make sure she was okay. Looking back now, I should have listened to my gut. Around 3 a.m., Jenna finally dozed off, sitting up in the armchair by the window. I stayed in bed half awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept circling the same thoughts. Why hadn't she gone to the front desk? Why didn't she have a phone? Something about her story wasn't adding up, but I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe I'd watched too many crime documentaries. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had let a stranger into my space without really thinking it through. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, turned it to silent, and texted my sister just in case. Something like, "Hey, random, but there's a girl hiding in my room. I'll call you tomorrow, just in case." Around 5 a.m., I finally drifted off for what felt like 20 minutes. When I opened my eyes again, the chair was empty. I sat up instantly. My first thought was maybe she had left, but then I heard the shower running. The bathroom door was shut, and faint music was coming from inside. That's when I noticed something else. Her purse was sitting on the floor near the chair, slightly open. I don't know what got into me, but something told me to look. I crouched down and gently tilted it just enough to peek inside. Right on top of her wallet and keys was a small kitchen knife. No sheath, no cover, just loose in the bag, blade pointed toward the bottom like it had been tossed in. My chest tightened, and everything in me screamed that this had gone from weird to dangerous. I stepped back quietly and sat on the edge of the bed trying to figure out what to do. I didn't want to overreact, but I also didn't want to end up on the morning news. I thought about grabbing my things and leaving while she was still in the bathroom. But what if she heard me? What if she came out? The shower turned off. I barely had time to sit up straight and pretend I hadn't seen anything before the door opened. Jenna came out, her hair damp, wrapped in a towel like this was just some normal sleepover. She looked at me and smiled. "Thanks for letting me crash. I feel a million times better now." I didn't respond right away. I forced a small smile and nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Glad you're okay." She sat back down in the chair like nothing was wrong. That's when she looked at me, really looked at me and said, "You didn't call anyone, right?" Her tone was soft, but her eyes were sharp now. Cold, like all that panic from earlier had burned off and left something else behind. I lied. I told her I hadn't. She stared for another second, then nodded and leaned back in the chair. "Good. I just need to get out of here today. I can't stay in this state. You have a car, right?" That was the moment it shifted from uncomfortable to terrifying. I didn't answer her right away. My throat felt dry, and I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears. She kept going like it was already decided. "We'll leave after breakfast. You can drop me somewhere quiet just over the border. No one will be looking for me there." She was, talking with this eerie calm now, like we'd been friends for years, like I'd already agreed. I kept nodding, pretending to be on board, but inside I was panicking. I had no idea what she was running from, or if she had done something much worse. Then she claimed, "And the knife." I couldn't stop thinking about the knife. I excused myself to go grab ice from the hallway, and the second I closed the door behind me, I walked straight to the elevator and pressed the button like my life depended on it. I didn't take the car. I left everything in the room, laptop, suitcase, even my charger, and walked barefoot across the lobby to the front desk. I told the night clerk that there was a woman in my room who wasn't supposed to be there, and that I was scared for my life. To his credit, he took one look at my face and called security. They walked me to the manager's office and told me to wait. I sat there for 20 minutes that felt like hours. Eventually, a police officer showed up. I gave my statement, every detail I could remember. They went up to the room 308, but Jenna was gone, just vanished. The door was unlocked, the chair still pushed back from the wall, and my suitcase half packed on the bed, but no sign of her, not even the knife. I filed a full report, and the officer said there had been no registered guest under that name. No one matching her description had checked in. I don't even know how she got a room key to begin with, the hotel said. Maybe she was squatting. Maybe she knew someone on staff, but they never found her. I ended up flying home that afternoon. I couldn't sleep for days after. I kept replaying it all, how close I came to driving away with her, how easily she got me to trust her, how calm she became when she thought she had control. To this day, I still don't know who she really was or what she had done before knocking on my door. But I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't left that room when I did, if I had gone along with it. Sometimes I check news, reports from the states nearby, looking for stories that sound even remotely familiar. I haven't found anything, just silence, and honestly, that scares me even more. I used to drive long-haul deliveries through the South, mostly between Texas and Georgia. I've had weird encounters before, shady gas stations, strange people asking for rides, but nothing that ever made me feel truly unsafe. This happened about 2 years ago, in Mississippi. I don't remember the exact highway, just that my GPS lost signal for a good 30 minutes, and I ended up turning onto a narrow back road that didn't even look paved in some parts. I figured I'd stop at the next place I saw to ask for directions, or maybe grab a snack and use the restroom. I wasn't in any kind of rush. It was a slow delivery day, and I'd planned to rest overnight anyway. It was late afternoon when I saw a small sign that said, "Country Motel, General Store." The building looked worn down, but not abandoned. Think wooden siding, dusty windows, a flickering open sign, the kind of place where the air smells like old wood and cigarettes as soon as you walk in. There was a man behind the counter, maybe in his 60s, with this leathery skin and a trucker cap. He didn't smile, just stared at me like he hadn't seen anyone in weeks. I asked if he had any rooms, and he nodded, said, "One left." Then he pointed to a door at the back and mumbled something about signing a guest book later. I was too tired to think much of it. I just wanted a break. After I dropped my stuff in the room, which was a total time capsule from the 80s, by the way, with stained curtains and a tube TV that barely worked, I went back into the store to grab some chips or something. That's when things started to feel ... weird. The guy was still behind the counter, but now he seemed more alert. He asked me if I wanted something real good, then said, "We keep the good stuff in the back freezer. Come take a look." I laughed politely and said I was just after something simple, but he insisted. Twice. "Better snacks in the freezer," he said, not smiling. "You'll like what we've got back there." His tone was off, too calm, like it was rehearsed or something. I started looking around more carefully. That's when I noticed a dark smudge on the floor behind the counter, like a reddish streak going from one end of the linoleum to a mat near the back. I couldn't tell if it was old grease or something worse, but the smell hit me next. Not strong, but faint. This sickly, sweet, rotting odor coming from behind a heavy steel door near the fridges. It didn't match anything else in that place. My stomach tightened. I mumbled something about needing to make a call and stepped outside, pretending to check my phone. That's when I decided I wasn't staying there another minute. I went straight back to my room, grabbed my duffel, and didn't even bother locking the door behind me. I remember feeling this sharp instinct, like something deep in my gut was telling me to get out now. I walked as fast as I could across the lot to my truck, trying not to look like I was panicking, but the second I got in and turned the key, I saw the guy come out of the store and just stand there. No wave, no question, no smile. He just watched me. And the worst part? He didn't seem surprised at all that I was leaving, like he knew it might happen. I didn't stop driving until I hit the next real town with a gas station and cell reception. I didn't even feel safe until there were actual lights around me and people I could see. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe the smell was just spoiled meat or something, and the guy was just a weirdo, not a threat. But I couldn't shake how wrong everything had felt. That quiet pressure to look in the freezer, the weird guest book I never signed, the blood-like stain behind the counter, none of it sat right. I slept in my truck that night in a well-lit lot. I wasn't about to check into another motel anytime soon. A couple days later, I was sitting at a diner outside of Jackson, scrolling local news while waiting on my food. That's when I saw a headline about a missing person. A young woman, college age, last seen driving through the area I had just come from. Her car had been found abandoned on the side of the road, not far from a place described as an old country motel with a general store attached. My blood ran cold. The article didn't mention anything else, just that police were asking anyone with information to come forward. I didn't want to get involved, but I couldn't stop thinking about that freezer, that smell, and how that guy had acted like me leaving early wasn't a surprise at all. I ended up calling the tip line and told them everything. The location, the smell, the stain, the guy's name if it was real. I saw Earl on a sticker near the register and how he kept trying to get me into the back. They took my statement, but I never heard anything else from them. No follow-up, no confirmation. A week later, I tried to look the place up again, but it was gone from Google Maps. The satellite view still showed the building, but there was no listing, no phone number, nothing, like it had never been there. I've gone through every possibility in my head, but none of it explains what I saw, or what I almost walked into. What really messes with me is how close I came to opening that door. If I had been a little more tired, a little less alert, I might have just gone along with it. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I had followed him to that freezer. Would I have ended up like that girl? Would I have even made it out? The whole thing keeps playing in my head at night sometimes, especially when I'm on dark roads alone. I'll never forget the way that man stared at me when I drove off. Not angry, not confused, just still, like he was already thinking about who'd come next. I haven't told many people about this. Some would probably say I imagined it, or made it sound worse than it was. But I know what I saw. That smell wasn't just old meat. I've worked in food service before. I know the difference between something expired and something dead. And no one tries that hard to get you to look at snacks. No one. It was like he didn't care about selling me anything. He just wanted me back there. That's what still gets to me. After that trip, I changed routes. I don't drive through Mississippi anymore, unless I absolutely have to. I don't trust country motels either. Not the small ones off the road where no one would hear you scream. People think those places are just old and dusty. Maybe a little creepy. But I've learned that sometimes they're more than that. Sometimes they're places where things happen, and no one ever talks about it. No reviews online. No cops that call you back. Just a dot on the map that quietly disappears. To this day, I have no idea what was really behind that freezer door. I never found out what happened to the missing girl either. The news just stopped talking about it. But I know what I felt that day, and sometimes when I think too hard about it, I wonder if I ever really escaped, or if I was just lucky enough to get away before it was my turn. Either way, I'm done pretending it didn't happen. That place was real. That man was real. And I'm telling this now because someone else might find themselves standing in front of a door that smells wrong. Trust your gut. I did, and I think it saved my life. I was 17, a high school senior, and honestly, life back then revolved around two things: dance and my little group of friends. We were all part of a competitive dance team from a small town in Ohio, and that weekend we had traveled to Indianapolis for a regional competition. It was one of those cheap trips where the school budget barely covered gas and rooms at a rundown 2-star hotel. I remember being excited, not just for the competition, but for the freedom of spending the weekend away from our parents. We were packed 3 to a room, and I shared mine with Taylor and Mariah, my best friends since middle school. That first night, after a long rehearsal, we were goofing around in the room, playing music too loud and eating vending machine junk like it was gourmet. Our room was on the 2nd floor, near the far end of the hallway, with a dusty view of the back parking lot. Across from us, maybe 3 or 4 steps away, was another room that seemed empty at first. But around 7 p.m., as we were getting ready to head downstairs for dinner, I caught a glimpse of someone standing just inside that doorway. A man, mid-40s maybe, with greasy hair pulled into a loose ponytail and a faded red flannel. He didn't look at us directly at first, just stood there, 1 foot inside the room, the other barely on the threshold, like he couldn't decide whether to come out or not. When our door opened and the hallway light hit him, that's when he turned and looked straight at me. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't a curious glance, or even a rude stare. It was like he was memorizing me. I didn't say anything to the girls at first, because honestly, I wasn't sure what I saw. Could have been some tired trucker, or a janitor, or just a random guest. But even when we came back up later after dinner, he was there again. Same position, same weird energy. This time he didn't retreat into the room when we walked past. He stayed in the doorway, eyes locked on our door, until we closed it. That night, we joked a little about it. Mariah made some crack about how we were finally interesting enough to have a stalker, but the vibe had shifted. We moved the little chain lock across, and even shoved a chair under the knob before going to sleep. It was one of those things you do just to feel safe, even if you're not totally sure why you feel unsafe. I woke up to the sound of the door handle rattling, like someone was testing it slowly, over and over again. It took me a second to realize it wasn't a dream. The room was completely dark, except for the soft orange glow from the street lamp outside filtering through the curtains. I sat up slowly, heart pounding, trying not to make any noise. Taylor was snoring lightly, but Mariah had stirred too, blinking at me from the other bed. The handle jiggled again, then stopped. Few seconds later, there was a low thud, like someone was pushing their weight against the door, gently, but deliberately. I held my breath. The chair under the knob creaked slightly, but didn't move. We stayed frozen like that for what felt like 10 full minutes. No footsteps, no more rattling. Just that awful silence pressing in on us from all sides. I was clutching my phone under the blanket, not even thinking about calling anyone, just holding it like some kind of safety net. Eventually, I whispered to Mariah, asking if she heard it too. She nodded, eyes wide and mouthed. "Don't open it." Taylor, by some miracle, kept sleeping. After a while, we convinced ourselves it had passed. Maybe it was someone drunk who got the wrong door. Still, I barely slept that night, jolting awake at every creak from the hallway. Morning came, and everything felt fake under the daylight. We joked about it while brushing our teeth like it had been some weird shared dream. But when I bent down to pick up my shoes near the door, I noticed something that made my stomach flip. The chain lock. It was unhooked. I was the last one to check it before bed, and I know for a fact I latched it. We all stood there staring at it like it had turned into some alien object. That's when Taylor, now finally paying attention, pointed out a small scrape on the inside edge of the door, right near the lock. It looked like someone had wedged something in there and tried to pop it open. We went down to the front desk and tried to explain what happened, but I could tell the girl behind the counter wasn't taking it seriously. She looked maybe 20, chewing gum and barely making eye contact. "You want me to call maintenance?" she asked, like we were complaining about a leaky faucet. I asked if there were cameras in the hallway, and she said she thought so, but only a manager could pull the footage. He wouldn't be in until noon. That day at the competition, none of us danced right. Our heads weren't in it. Every time I tried to focus, I saw that man's face behind my eyelids. That kind of stare doesn't just vanish, it clings to you. After the event wrapped, we went back to the hotel just to pack and get out. But before we left, I convinced Taylor to come with me to the front desk one last time. The manager was there now. Not angry, not confused, just still, like he was already thinking about who'd come next. I haven't told many people about this. Some would probably say I imagined it, or made it sound worse than it was. But I know what I saw. That smell wasn't just old meat. I've worked in food service before. I know the difference between something expired and something dead. And no one tries that hard to get you to look at snacks. No one. It was like he didn't care about selling me anything. He just wanted me back there. That's what still gets to me. After that trip, I changed routes. I don't drive through Mississippi anymore, unless I absolutely have to. I don't trust country motels either. Not the small ones off the road where no one would hear you scream. People think those places are just old and dusty, maybe a little creepy. But I've learned that sometimes they're more than that. Sometimes they're places where things happen, and no one ever talks about it. No reviews online, no cops that call you back. Just a dot on the map that quietly disappears. To this day, I have no idea what was really behind that freezer door. I never found out what happened to the missing girl either. The news just stopped talking about it. But I know what I felt that day, and sometimes when I think too hard about it, I wonder if I ever really escaped, or if I was just lucky enough to get away before it was my turn. Either way, I'm done pretending it didn't happen. That place was real. That man was real. And I'm telling this now because someone else might find themselves standing in front of a door that smells wrong. Trust your gut. I did, and I think it saved my life. I was 17, a high school senior, and honestly, life back then revolved around two things: dance and my little group of friends. We were all part of a competitive dance team from a small town in Ohio, and that weekend we had traveled to Indianapolis for a regional competition. It was one of those cheap trips where the school budget barely covered gas and rooms at a rundown 2-star hotel. I remember being excited, not just for the competition, but for the freedom of spending the weekend away from our parents. We were packed 3 to a room, and I shared mine with Taylor and Mariah, my best friends since middle school. That first night, after a long rehearsal, we were goofing around in the room, playing music too loud and eating vending machine junk like it was gourmet. Our room was on the 2nd floor, near the far end of the hallway, with a dusty view of the back parking lot. Across from us, maybe 3 or 4 steps away, was another room that seemed empty at first. But around 7 p.m., as we were getting ready to head downstairs for dinner, I caught a glimpse of someone standing just inside that doorway. A man, mid-40s maybe, with greasy hair pulled into a loose ponytail and a faded red flannel. He didn't look at us directly at first, just stood there, 1 foot inside the room, the other barely on the threshold, like he couldn't decide whether to come out or not. When our door opened and the hallway light hit him, that's when he turned and looked straight at me. I don't know how else to describe it. It wasn't a curious glance, or even a rude stare. It was like he was memorizing me. I didn't say anything to the girls at first, because honestly, I wasn't sure what I saw. Could have been some tired trucker, or a janitor, or just a random guest. But even when we came back up later after dinner, he was there again. Same position, same weird energy. This time he didn't retreat into the room when we walked past. He stayed in the doorway, eyes locked on our door until we closed it. That night, we joked a little about it. Mariah made some crack about how we were finally interesting enough to have a stalker, but the vibe had shifted. We moved the little chain lock across and even shoved a chair under the knob before going to sleep. It was one of those things you do just to feel safe, even if you're not totally sure why you feel unsafe. I woke up to the sound of the door handle rattling, like someone was testing it slowly, over and over again. It took me a second to realize it wasn't a dream. The room was completely dark, except for the soft orange glow from the street lamp outside filtering through the curtains. I sat up slowly, heart pounding, trying not to make any noise. Taylor was snoring lightly, but Mariah had stirred too, blinking at me from the other bed. The handle jiggled again, then stopped. Few seconds later, there was a low thud, like someone was pushing their weight against the door, gently, but deliberately. I held my breath. The chair under the knob creaked slightly, but didn't move. We stayed frozen like that for what felt like 10 full minutes. No footsteps, no more rattling. Just that awful silence pressing in on us from all sides. I was clutching my phone under the blanket, not even thinking about calling anyone, just holding it like some kind of safety net. Eventually, I whispered to Mariah, asking if she heard it too. She nodded, eyes wide and mouthed, "Don't open it." Taylor, by some miracle, kept sleeping. After a while, we convinced ourselves it had passed. Maybe it was someone drunk who got the wrong door. Still, I barely slept that night, jolting awake at every creak from the hallway. Morning came, and everything felt fake under the daylight. We joked about it while brushing our teeth like it had been some weird shared dream. But when I bent down to pick up my shoes near the door, I noticed something that made my stomach flip. The chain lock. It was unhooked. I was the last one to check it before bed, and I know for a fact I latched it. We all stood there staring at it like it had turned into some alien object. That's when Taylor, now finally paying attention, pointed out a small scrape on the inside edge of the door, right near the lock. It looked like someone had wedged something in there and tried to pop it open. We went down to the front desk and tried to explain what happened, but I could tell the girl behind the counter wasn't taking it seriously. She looked maybe 20, chewing gum and barely making eye contact. "You want me to call maintenance?" she asked, like we were complaining about a leaky faucet. I asked if there were cameras in the hallway, and she said she thought so. but only a manager could pull the footage. He wouldn't be in until noon. That day at the competition, none of us danced right. Our heads weren't in it. Every time I tried to focus, I saw that man's face behind my eyelids. That kind of stare doesn't just vanish, it clings to you. After the event wrapped, we went back to the hotel just to pack and get out. But before we left, I convinced Taylor to come with me to the front desk one last time. The manager was there now. I just knew I had to get out of that room. I started backing up toward the window, which was half covered by a curtain. The guy didn't move, but I noticed he shifted his weight like he was ready to block me if I tried to bolt. That's when I realized the door was locked from the inside with that deadbolt chain, and he was standing right in front of it. I tried to play it off, said I left something in my car and needed to grab it real quick. The woman didn't even react. The guy just stared at me, and I swear the silence in that room felt like it was squeezing the air out of me. I walked over to the window like I was just checking something outside, but what I saw almost made me drop my phone. There was someone crouched down next to my car. They weren't even trying to be subtle. They had the driver's side door cracked open and their head popped up when I looked. That's when panic really set in. I couldn't even tell if it was a man or woman out there, but whoever it was had gloves on and something metallic in their hand. Maybe a tool or something. My mind was racing. Were they trying to disable my car, plant something, steal it? I didn't know. I just knew I had to move. I turned away from the window and said, louder this time, I'm serious. I left my wallet in the car. The guy stepped forward, just one step, but it was enough. I didn't wait for anything else. I ran straight toward the bathroom, slammed the door shut, locked it, and flipped the window open. It was one of those tiny ones, the kind you'd never expect someone to fit through, but I didn't care. I squeezed through it like my life depended on it. I landed hard in the alley behind the building. My arm scraped against the brick wall, and my phone fell out of my pocket onto the pavement. I grabbed it and sprinted around the side of the motel, praying whoever was by my car hadn't seen me yet. When I reached the lot, the Honda was gone, just vanished. My car door was wide open, and the glove compartment had been rummaged through. I didn't even check what they took. I jumped in, started the engine, and floored it out of there. I didn't stop until I was back on the main road, with actual lights and people around me. The signal came back as soon as I was a mile away. That alone made my stomach turn, like they were doing something to jam it. I pulled into a gas station and just sat there with the engine running, trying to process what the hell had just happened. I checked my phone, but the messages with Alyssa were gone, completely wiped. The app still showed our chat, but everything from that night was erased. Her profile was gone too. No trace of the room number, no screenshots, nothing. I didn't even know how to report it, because I technically hadn't been robbed. Not really. I kept thinking about the way she looked at me, not scared, not guilty, just empty. Like she'd done this before, or worse, like she wasn't really involved, just bait. I didn't sleep that night. I kept imagining someone still had my info. Then maybe I'd see that Honda parked outside my building the next day. For the next couple of weeks, I was paranoid as hell. I parked a few blocks away from my apartment just to see if anyone was tailing me. I checked my car every morning, and every night. I even covered the peephole in my front door, and slept with a knife under my pillow. No one ever showed up. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, unfinished. I didn't tell anyone about what happened. Not friends, not family. Partly because I was embarrassed, but also because I didn't want to deal with the lecture. I kept going over it in my head, trying to figure out if I missed something, if I was targeted, or just unlucky. I started reading about phone jammers and tracking devices, and the more I read, the worse I felt. It wasn't just some creepy setup. It was organized. One day, out of sheer impulse, I drove back to that motel in Petersburg. I told myself I was just curious, that I wanted to see if the place even still existed. Like maybe the whole thing had been in my head, but it was still there. Same flickering sign, same layout. Room 206 was open, being cleaned by an older woman in a housekeeping uniform. I asked her if she remembered a guest in that room from 2 weeks ago, and she looked confused. Said the room hadn't been booked in a month, that it had been out of service for repairs until just 2 days ago. I thanked her and left. I don't know if she was lying or just didn't want to get involved, but that moment made everything spiral again. If the room wasn't supposed to be rented, who gave me the number? Who had the key? What still gets me is how smooth it all was. The app account, the timing, the way the guy locked the door, like it was muscle memory. The other person outside going through my car while everything was happening inside. It wasn't random. I think they've done this before. Maybe they do it a lot. Maybe someone didn't get out, like I did. I still think about that woman sometimes. Her face, her expression. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't scared. She wasn't even pretending to be someone else. She was just ... there, present, but not human in the way you'd expect. I've never seen eyes that empty before. I don't know what they were planning, and honestly, I don't want to know. Nothing's happened since then. No strange cars, no more messages, no knocks on my door. It was like it all disappeared the same way it started, out of nowhere. But I still can't explain how my phone signal was jammed, or how they got into my car without setting off the alarm. Every now and then, I'll scroll through those apps just to see if Alyssa shows up again. She never does, but once, maybe 6 months later, I saw a profile that looked similar, different name, different city, same kind of photos. I didn't click it. I deleted the app and haven't used anything like that since. Whatever that was, whoever they were, I think I got lucky. And I'm not looking to find out what happens when someone doesn't. I'm a 31-year-old nurse from Tennessee, and what happened? To me, last summer still creeps into my dreams some nights. It was the end of July, and I had just spent the weekend visiting my brother and his wife in Georgia. I had planned to drive straight home that Sunday evening, but halfway through the drive, I hit a wall of exhaustion. I was running on 4 hours of sleep and hadn't eaten since noon. My vision was getting blurry from the road lights, and I knew pushing through would be stupid, so I pulled off near an exit and booked a room at a small roadside motel. Nothing fancy, just one of those old 2-story places with faded paint and ice machines that sound like they're dying. I remember checking in just before 9 p.m. The front desk clerk was a woman in her 60s who barely looked up when I walked in. She handed me the key to room 108 and mumbled something about the soda machine being around the side of the building. The room itself was dated, yellow walls with peeling corners, a rattling air conditioner in the window, and a stiff floral bedspread that smelled faintly of bleach. But at that point, all I needed was a place to shower and sleep. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and lay down for a few minutes, scrolling through my phone. That's when I realized how thirsty I was. It was around 10 p.m. when I stepped outside to get something from the soda machine. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few scattered cars, including an old silver truck parked 2 spots down from mine. The motel lighting was dim, casting orange halos around each bulb, and the air felt heavy, like a storm was lingering just beyond the trees. I walked around the side of the building where the vending machines were, coin purse in hand, and that's when I heard a man's voice behind me, low and hurried. "Hey, excuse me, ma'am? Sorry, I'm locked out of my room. You wouldn't happen to know if the office is still open?" He was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. Wore a denim jacket, despite the heat, and had this unshaven, greasy look like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were jittery, not just tired, but like he was constantly scanning. I hesitated, not because of what he said, but because something about him instantly put me on edge. Still, I didn't want to be rude. I told him I had just checked in and hadn't seen anyone at the desk since then, but I could walk with him to see if the clerk was still around. He nodded, thanked me in a weirdly stiff way, and started walking beside me. Too close. I felt that internal alarm starting to buzz, but I brushed it off. I was just tired, I told myself. Just tired. As we turned the corner of the building, I realized how isolated that side of the lot felt. The soda and ice machines were humming, but other than that, it was dead silent. No traffic noise, no voices, nothing. That silence wrapped around us in a way that made my skin crawl. I started to say something like, "Maybe you should knock on the office door." But before I could even finish the sentence, I noticed he wasn't looking at the building anymore. He was staring straight at me. His whole posture changed. Shoulders tense, hands sliding into his jacket. That's when I saw the blade. Not some tiny pocket knife. This thing was long and serrated like something out of a hunting set. He said real quiet, "You weren't supposed to see anything." My brain couldn't even register what that meant. I stammered. "What? I didn't see anything, I swear." But he stepped forward and shoved me against the wall. The shock of hitting the brick took the wind out of me, and I felt this sharp burn on my left side. I looked down and realized he'd stabbed me. Not deep, but enough for blood to start soaking through my scrub top. I screamed loud and raw and tried to push him off, but he was stronger. He kept repeating that same phrase. "You weren't supposed to see anything," like he was possessed or trying to convince himself. Everything got blurry after that. I think my body went into some kind of survival autopilot. I remember grabbing the edge of the ice machine, trying to use it to swing myself away from him. He raised the knife again, and I honestly thought that was it. I was done. But right then, I heard heavy footsteps running up behind us. A man's voice yelled something, "Hey, drop it." And then there was this metallic clang, and a cloud of white dust exploded between us. The guy with the knife stumbled back, coughing, while this other guy, tall, bald, maybe in his 50s, kept slamming a fire extinguisher into the attacker's arm until the knife clattered to the ground. I collapsed to the pavement. My side was on fire, and I could feel my hands shaking uncontrollably. The guy who saved me dropped the extinguisher and knelt beside me, checking if I was conscious, if I could move. I think I said my name, or maybe just hospital. Everything was spinning. Another motel guest had come out and was calling 911. I remember seeing the guy who attacked me curled on the ground, coughing, covered in foam. He didn't look dangerous anymore. He looked pathetic. But even then, I couldn't shake the way he kept staring at me, like I had ruined something for him. The ambulance came fast, faster than I expected, for a place that felt like the middle of nowhere. I was taken to the nearest ER with a small puncture wound and a cracked rib from when I hit the wall. The doctor told me I was incredibly lucky. The knife didn't go deeper. I barely remember the ride. Was shaking so badly, they had to give me something to calm down. I don't think the physical pain even registered compared to the mental fog I was in. I kept replaying his words. "You weren't supposed to see anything," trying to make sense of it. I hadn't seen him before, hadn't noticed anything weird earlier that day, but maybe I had seen something without realizing it. A license plate, a room door left open. I'll never know. The police came to take my statement while I was still on a hospital bed. They told me the guy's name was Kevin Bishop. He was a drifter with a long record: assault, breaking and entering, even a kidnapping charge back in 2015 that got thrown out for lack of evidence. He had checked into the motel under a fake name. No ID. They think he was staying there to lay low after some kind of robbery gone sideways. Apparently, earlier that day, another guest had reported hearing arguing in one of the rooms and a woman crying. But when staff checked, nothing was there. Police later found blood in room 203. They never said whose. I stayed in town for 2 extra days to finish the police report and get stitched up. but the motel refunded my stay like that would fix anything. I still get goosebumps when I think about how close I came to dying over a soda. The man who saved me, his name was Ronald. He was a trucker passing through, and if he hadn't walked out of his room when he did, I probably wouldn't be here writing this. I sent him a thank you letter a few weeks later, along with a photo of my little nieces. He didn't respond, but I hope he knows he changed someone's life that night. I don't stop at random motels anymore. I don't walk outside alone at night, even just to grab a drink. People always say, trust your gut, and I didn't. I pushed that warning feeling down because I didn't want to seem rude or paranoid. Now I'd rather be rude than be dead. And to anyone reading this who works night shifts, who travels alone, or who thinks it's just a quick stop, what could happen? Please, please be careful. I didn't see it coming, but I felt it, and next time I'll listen. I was in Cincinnati for work, just a short overnight trip to meet with a supplier the next morning. I checked into a business hotel near the airport, around 7:30 p.m., nothing fancy. Just one of those mid-range chains with clean lobbies, beige carpets, and vending machines that never work right. I was on the 4th floor, room 417, and I remember being oddly aware of how quiet everything was. Barely saw anyone in the hallway when I got there. I ordered takeout, ate at the desk while watching something on Netflix, then got ready for bed. I was almost asleep when the room phone rang. It was weird because who even uses those phones anymore? I figured it was the front desk, and I was right. The guy on the other end said there was a billing issue with my card and asked if I could come down for a moment to sort it out. I was half asleep, but I didn't think much of it. These things happen, especially with corporate cards. I asked if it could wait until the morning, but he said they needed to fix it before the night audit. The voice sounded normal enough, not robotic or off in any way. Still groggy, I threw on some sweatpants and grabbed my key card. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have been. When I got to the lobby, there was no one behind the counter. No bell, no signs, just the faint sound of some late night show playing on a TV in the breakfast area. I waited for a minute, then leaned over the desk and called out a quiet, "Hello." Eventually a woman came out from the back office and looked surprised to see me. When I explained that someone from the front desk had called me about a billing problem, she frowned and said no one had made any calls. She was the only one on duty that night, and her log didn't show any issues with my room. That's when something in my stomach turned. It wasn't panic, not yet, but a kind of slow unease, like when your brain picks up on something before your body catches up. I mumbled something like, maybe it was a mistake, and headed back to the elevator, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was someone new at the front desk earlier, maybe a system glitch, whatever. But when I got back to my floor, I saw right away that my door wasn't fully closed. It was open maybe an inch, just gently swaying inward, and the chain lock, which I always put on by habit, was dangling broken off the latch. I froze, like fully stopped in my tracks, just staring at the door. My first thought was that maybe housekeeping had come in for some reason, but it didn't make sense. This was well past midnight, and I hadn't requested anything. I remember just standing there in the hallway for a few seconds, heart starting to pound, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But that chain lock being busted, that was the part I couldn't explain away. I knew I'd used it. I always use it, especially in hotels, and it wasn't just undone, it was snapped. The little metal hook was bent outward, like someone forced it. I pushed the door open slowly, standing to the side in case someone was still in there. I don't know what I expected to see, but the lights were still off, and everything looked almost the same. My suitcase was still near the desk. The bed looked mostly undisturbed, and the bathroom door was wide open. But I swear to God, the air felt different, like that weird stillness after someone leaves a room, warm like breath had just been there. I stood in the doorway holding my breath, listening. No movement, no voices, just the hum of the AC unit kicking on. I grabbed the closest thing I could use as a weapon, a lamp base that wasn't even heavy, and slowly walked through the room, turning on lights as I went. I checked the closet under the bed, even pulled the shower curtain back like I was in a horror movie. Nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there. The chair at the desk was slightly pulled out. I hadn't left it that way, and one of the nightstand drawers was open a couple inches. I didn't even remember opening it at all. That drawer had the Bible and the little notepad, untouched, but it was like someone was looking for something. I wanted to call the front desk again, but my phone was still on the bed where I'd left it, and the room phone just gave me static. That's when the fear really hit me. I felt watched. Not like someone was in the room anymore, but like they had been. Like they were close, maybe still in the hallway, maybe even watching the door to see if I'd come back. I locked the deadbolt and jammed the busted chain as best as I could. I dragged the desk chair in front of the door and sat there with my back against the wall, holding the stupid lamp like it was going to help. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even blink. I waited until the sun started coming up before I even considered moving. I kept listening for footsteps in the hallway, doors opening, anything, but it was dead quiet all night. Around 6:30 a.m., I got dressed and went straight down to the front desk again. A different guy was there now, and when I told him what had happened, he just looked at me like I was confused or making it up. He checked the call logs. Nothing. Said no one on staff called my room, and no one else had reported anything strange on that floor. I asked if they had cameras in the hallway, and he said only in the lobby and elevators. I checked out early. Didn't even stay for the free breakfast. I drove straight to a Starbucks a few miles away, just to breathe. I remember sitting in the parking lot for almost an hour, trying to calm down, replaying everything in my head. I kept thinking, what if I hadn't gone downstairs? What if I'd ignored the call, or worse? What if I'd come back 5 minutes later than I did? There was no sign of forced entry, no stolen items, no real evidence that anything even happened. But I know what I saw. That door was open, that chain was broken, something was off. I talked to a friend later that day who works in hotel security, and he said sometimes people try to gain access to rooms by impersonating staff, calling guests to lure them out. He said it's rare, but it happens. That thought has haunted me ever since. Whoever it was, they knew I was alone. They knew which room I was in, and they timed it just right, like they were watching me. I kept thinking about how quiet that floor was, how I didn't see a single guest the whole night. It's like I was completely isolated, and someone knew that. It's been a couple years since it happened, and I still think about it every time I stay in a hotel. I double lock everything, prop a chair under the knob, even wedge the luggage rack against the door sometimes. I've never gotten another strange call like that, but I also haven't been able to shake the feeling that someone else was in that room with me that night. Just for a few minutes. Long enough to move something, break the lock, and then vanish like it never happened. No one believes me when I tell it, but if you've ever had a moment where your gut tells you something was wrong, and you can't prove it, you'll understand why this still messes with me. Not sure why I'm sharing this now, but I guess I'm still trying to process what happened. It was about 2 years ago, when I was 32 and going through a pretty rough patch. I had just left a long and toxic relationship, packed whatever I could fit into my car, and drove halfway across the state with my 2 girls, Alyssa, who was 9 at the time, and Lauren, who had just turned 6. We didn't have a place lined up yet, so I booked a cheap roadside motel just outside a small town called Marlow. I figured we'd stay for a few nights while I looked for an apartment and got the girls registered at their new school. It wasn't ideal, but it was all I could afford. The motel itself wasn't the worst I've seen. One of those one-story U-shaped buildings where you can park right outside your room. The sign flickered at night, and the lobby smelled like old coffee and bleach, but the room was clean enough. When I walked in to check us in, there was a man behind the desk who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Early 40s maybe, scruffy beard, grayish skin, and a weird twitch in his left eye that kept catching my attention. His name tag said Ed. I smiled, gave him my name, and he barely looked up from his screen. Then he glanced out the glass door at my car and saw the girls waiting inside. That's when his whole demeanor changed. He asked how old they were with this crooked smile that immediately made me uncomfortable. I said something like, "They're just kids," and tried to move on quickly. But he kept going, said Alyssa looked mature for her age, and asked if we were staying long. I laughed awkwardly, didn't respond, just grabbed the room key and walked out fast. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe he was just socially weird, but I locked the room tight that night. It was a ground floor unit, close to the back corner of the property, with a big window facing the parking lot. I pushed the armchair up against the window, just in case, even though it felt paranoid. The next day I took the girls into town to check out the local library and see if we could find a grocery store. I didn't think anything was off until we came out of the library and I saw someone standing across the street near a bus stop, just kind of watching us. He had on a baseball cap pulled low, but I swear I recognized that twitch. It was Ed. He wasn't pretending to wait for a bus. He wasn't on his phone. He was just standing there, staring. I quickly grabbed the girl's hands and walked to the car, telling myself again that it was just coincidence. But that night, I made sure to pull the curtains tight and left the bathroom light on while we slept. The second night was worse. Around 11:30 p.m., I heard what I thought was someone messing with the soda machine outside our room. I sat up in bed, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But then I heard the crunch of gravel, slow footsteps right outside our window. I didn't move. I just sat there, frozen, staring at the silhouette of the armchair pressed up against the curtains. The footsteps stopped. Then came this soft metallic rattle, like someone testing the handle of the window from the outside. My heart was racing, so fast I thought I might pass out. I didn't want to scare the girls, so I whispered their names and told them to stay in bed while I called the front desk. No one answered. I tried 3 times, and each time it just rang and rang. I finally called 911. I couldn't see outside clearly because the curtains were too thick, but I stayed on the phone, whispering to the dispatcher and praying whoever was out there wouldn't try to force the window open. The cops showed up within maybe 10 minutes. By then, whoever it was had vanished. The officer who came to the door was kind, but he looked skeptical. He walked the perimeter, didn't find anything suspicious, and said it was probably just a passerby or someone from town cutting through the lot. I tried to press him about the man at the front desk, but he just nodded and said he'd make a note of it. The next morning, I went to the lobby to ask for a different room, something closer to the center, maybe near the office. But Ed wasn't there. There was a different woman, maybe in her 60s, who said she was the manager and that Ed only covered the night shift. I asked if there had been any complaints about him, and she immediately got defensive. Said Ed was a good guy and that he'd been working there for years. When I mentioned the police being called, she looked surprised, said no one told her anything. I didn't push it further. I just asked for a different room and made up a story about needing easier access for my kids. That afternoon, we went out again, mostly just to kill time and stay out of the motel for as long as we could. I took the girls to a local diner for milkshakes, and when I went to pay, I swear I saw Ed's reflection in the glass behind the register. He was sitting in a car across the street, not even trying to hide it this time. Just parked there, engine running, looking right at us. That was the moment I stopped trying to rationalize anything. Something was seriously wrong. This wasn't awkward behavior or coincidence anymore. It felt like we were being hunted. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew it had something to do with my daughters. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the armchair by the window, a kitchen knife from my bag on my lap, and just waited. The girls were both asleep, curled up in the same bed. totally unaware of how serious things had gotten. Around 2 a.m. I heard the gravel crunch again. My stomach dropped. I turned off the bathroom light and held my breath. Then came the soft, deliberate sound of the window being lifted. Slow, like whoever was doing it was trying not to make a sound. But I had locked it and shoved the chair back in place. The curtains moved slightly from the pressure. I stood up, heart pounding, and shouted, "Get the hell away from here," loud enough to wake the girls. They both sat up crying as I rushed to turn on every light in the room. I grabbed my phone and called the police again. This time they took it a lot more seriously. When the officers arrived, they actually caught him, Ed, behind the building near the dumpster. He had gloves on and a crowbar in his backpack. He claimed he was taking out the trash, but the cops weren't buying it. They asked to see the security footage from the motel's cameras, and that's when things got even creepier. The cameras facing the back of the building had been manually disconnected. I packed our stuff before the sun came up. The manager was mortified when she found out what happened, but I didn't want her apologies. I just wanted out. Ed was arrested, though I never found out what came of it. I refused to testify. I didn't want him knowing my full name or anything else that could be traced. We ended up staying at a friend's house in the next town over for a few weeks until I could find a proper place. I enrolled the girls in school quietly, used a P.O. box for everything, and kept a bat under my bed for months after that. To this day, I don't know what his real intentions were. Maybe he was just a creep who fixated on my daughters, or maybe it could have been worse if I hadn't been so paranoid. Either way, I trust my gut now, completely. If something feels off, it probably is. People like Ed don't usually look like monsters. Sometimes they just wear a name tag and smile, too wide behind a motel desk. When I was around 22 years old, I had a scary encounter while staying at a hotel for a job. Around 2010, I was working for a traveling photography group that took church directory photos. Each photographer drove separately from all over the place. So I was in Harlan, Iowa at the time. I was staying at a hotel along with other photographers who joined me. I believe there were 4 of us, 2 guys, a girl, and myself. One morning I went breakfast and was watching TV in the hotel breakfast area. Someone was also down there nearby, a guy. When he looked at me, I said, "Good morning," as I do whenever I go just to be friendly. He said it back and we just had a polite exchange, something you would do with a stranger you never thought you would see again. He mentioned he was staying there with his team for a construction job. I go to leave and I say something very casual like, "Well, have a good one, see you later." And he said something like, "Could we hang later?" I didn't think anything of it and just brushed it off like, "Yeah, maybe." I don't remember if it was the same day or not, but as I didn't work until 11 a.m., I decided to go take a nap since I didn't sleep well the night before. We tend to work from like 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., give or take, depending on the size of the church, etc., while laying in my room. I kept receiving phone calls to my room phone. I wasn't used to getting calls like that ever, so I just picked up. I would say hello, but nobody would answer. After a few times, I eventually just took the receiver off and placed it beside the phone so it would stop ringing. When it was time to get up and leave, I left my room and I saw the guy was there in the hall. I waved casually, still not thinking anything of it. He asked where I was going, and I said I had to go to work. My friend then showed up, one of the female photographers, and I went with her to her car, as I was going to ride with her to the church. I told her about getting strange phone calls, and she mentioned that she did as well. Later that night, there was a thunderstorm. My photographer group and I stood by the hotel lobby door, watching the lightning. It was thundering and extremely dark. There were chances for tornadoes, so we were keeping tabs with each other. Eventually, I go to my room for the night, and I hear a knock on my door. I didn't really want to answer it. However, I did, cracking the door to see who it was. was the guy. He talked about how I said we could hang out, and I told him I was too tired after working all day long and I needed to sleep. I then shut the door. Now, I can't remember if this was the next morning or still night, but I recall him knocking again, but I wouldn't answer. I pretended to either be out or sleeping. I called my mom and started talking to her. I told her what was happening, and although I was scared, I almost acted like I wasn't when speaking with her. Then suddenly, I had a weird feeling. I whispered to my mom, "Mom, hold on a second. I need to check something." I then tiptoe as quietly over to my room door as possible. I look out the peephole and I see him. I then see him turn his head to my door, as if he was listening for something. My heart started to race. I then saw him move to the side. You know how the wall sometimes goes in for the doors, so there's like an indentation in the hallway for each room. Well, he goes to the wall away from the room that juts out. I think he thought he was hiding because he would try to his head around the corner of the jut-out portion, as if he was listening for something. I walked to the furthest side of my room quietly and whispered to my mom about how I'm scared. I called the front desk to complain like my mom suggested. I can't remember if I also texted my friend or called her, but she also complained to the front desk about the various phone calls she received. Eventually we were given new rooms, and the construction group manager was told by the hotel about one of his guys, and that creepy guy was told to stay away from us. I even told some of the church people about that situation, and they all said if we needed to stay with them, we could. All very nice, but still strangers to me, and I didn't trust anyone at that point. I'm not sure what happened to him, as I didn't see him after that. I was a little jealous of my friend because she ended up with a hot tub in her room and I didn't, but it was fine. However, after that, I was way more aware and careful with who I talked to and what I said. A 31-year-old female stays away from home on a business trip. About an hour ago, around 8:30 p.m., here I had just gotten back to my room from a work dinner. I heard shuffling in the hallway and peeked out of the peephole. I saw a figure seemingly outside the room to the left of mine, looking outward. They were knocking the lighting and said twice quickly, "Hello, hello." Then it sounded like the door opened and closed. I was like, okay, they must have forgotten what room they were in or something, and someone let them in. I walk back to the main part of my room, and I hear shuffling again. I look out again and see a figure. Can't really make out what the person looks like, but I see them on the other side of my room this time. And again here, light knocking, and hello, hello. Now I'm starting to get a weird spidery sense of like, what the hell is going on here? I see the figure leave and think, okay, that was really weird. Then I again start hearing shuffling. I start walking toward the hotel room door and hear a line knock on what sounds to be my room door yet again. And I hear, "Hello, hello," and immediately after someone attempts to open my door. Thank God I had the cross latch pulled over, not the deadbolt though. My heart stopped as I stood there and watched the door hit the latch and fall back shut. I called the front desk and informed them that someone had just tried entering my room and I'm not staying with anyone. The front desk attendant just replied back with, to which I replied, "Okay. Well, that's very concerning. Can you please send someone up to check around?" The attendant then replied, "Well, there's two," which I asked if I should call the police instead, because I was very worried, as I then started to cry a bit. She then replied that I should definitely do what I thought I needed to do. I hung up and cried for a bit, not really sure what to do. I didn't want to ask for another room, because I'm too scared to leave now. 10 minutes later, the hotel phone starts ringing. I was honestly feeling really scared to answer, but I did. It was the front desk attendant, and she said the police were going to be coming to my room. And she didn't want me to panic when I heard someone knock on my door. I said okay, and hung up. I just sat there and thought, how do I know if this is legit? Whoever tried to access my room had a key. Otherwise, how else would the door have actually opened? A few minutes later, as expected, I heard a knock. I looked out the peephole and saw two male officers. I didn't ask to see their IDs, which, in hindsight, probably would have been the smart thing to do. But I was so shaken up and not really thinking. I opened the door and they asked what was going on. I told them all that I explained above. They said it was good that I had the cross latch pulled over because the door would open if not. I then responded, "It's a hotel. What do you mean? What's the point of the access card then?" and wiggled the handle. We were in the hallway talking with my door open, just for context. Then they took a pause and were like, "Oh, it automatically locks." Again, I'm like, yeah, it's a hotel. So then they had me shut the door and open it with the key to test. Sure enough, it didn't open without the access card. They then said that it was probably housekeeping. I then responded that the front desk attendant told me there was no housekeeping up there when I called. Plus, it was 8:30 p.m. Why would housekeeping be coming by at that time, unless I had requested someone to come by? Plus, I noticed housekeeping had already been done during the day because my trash was emptied and the dirty towel was gone. They immediately told me that they thought it was housekeeping and not to worry, but if anything else happened or I felt unsafe to call them. They also said that if I wanted to change rooms, they were sure the hotel would accommodate this. I said okay while crying and they left. Now I'm sitting in my room crying, laying under the covers of my clothes. I'm sure I won't sleep tonight. I'm also too afraid to change rooms because I don't want to leave this room. I have the cross latch pulled over and the deadbolt locked. I think I'm safe. Am I being paranoid? Was it probably really just housekeeping? Should I be doing something different? Update. I'm home safe and promptly came down with a nasty bug slowly crawling out of it. I'm really glad that I followed my gut and reacted the way I did to do what I could to stay safe. I was able to speak with the manager the next day when she came in at 11 a.m. Unfortunately, the response from her was really disappointing. Just like the night shift front desk clerk and the morning shift front desk clerks when I checked out. Needless to say, I will never stay in this hotel again, and I will be avoiding this large chain as a whole. So this happened about 7 months ago. I was visiting San Diego for job interviews and staying in my favorite hotel in Sorrento Mesa. For a background, I'm a 40-year-old man and a pretty big guy. I'm 6'1" and a former strip club bouncer. Now on to the weirdness. On my third night, I was up pretty late after hanging out with some old friends after my interviews. I got back to the hotel around 2 a.m. with some Sonny's donuts. After eating a few, drinking a few more, and watching South Park post-COVID, I decided to have a smoke before going to bed. This made it now around 3 a.m., so I go downstairs. Walk out front to the smoking area by the fountain, but there's another couple who are also staying at the hotel already there. I didn't want to impose, so I decided to just walk around the outside parts of the hotel while I smoked. I walked around the pool, the barbecue area, the basketball courts, and then started back for the side door. As I did, a black sedan drove up alongside me and stopped. The window rolled down, and a tiny Asian woman asked if I knew how to get out of the parking lot and back to the street. Now from there, when she asked me, this was literally in a straight line, about 150 feet in front of her. So I thought she was either drunk or just blind. So I just politely said yes, just keep going straight, and then turn left at the tree. She then asked me if I could get in the car and show her. Now again, I'm a former strip club bouncer, and this woman looked very much like the Walmart alley wonk. There was absolutely no intimidation factor whatsoever. But for some reason I instantly felt uneasy. Again, it was literally right in front of her. She could see the road. Also, the windows were all tinted far more than they should have been, and I honestly couldn't tell if anyone else was in the car. I used the smoking as an excuse to not get in the car, but she said she didn't mind and gave me a very creepy smile. I politely declined and again pointed out that the road was literally right there, so I'd just be walking back in 5 seconds anyway. She again asked me if I would get in and show her. This was feeling like a weird kid/ice cream truck situation. I mean, guys, really? How often do decently good-looking women just drive up and ask you to get in their car at 3 a.m. in a hotel parking lot? I mean, how often does anyone ask a big bearded guy to just hop on in the car under these circumstances? Nothing about this was right. Again, I politely declined as I finished my smoke and was luckily already standing right at the hotel's side door when all of this started, so I just went in. The woman just drove off as she rolled up the window. Right exactly to the exit, she asked. Me too. Show her too. So I told the front desk about it, and they said they'd keep an eye out. But I'm quite sure nothing was ever done or came of it. Just one of those things that really makes me wonder, what the hell did she want me in the car for so badly? A pretty man, I'm not, so it had to just be some kind of scam. I just wonder exactly how much danger I was really in. So I'm a 22-year-old male and decided to stay in a Motel 6 for one night in the southern New Hampshire area. I had back-to-back hospital shifts, so it really wasn't worth it to drive 45 minutes back home just to do it again 6 hours later. I checked in around 11:15 p.m. and went to my room. Of course, the door refused to open, and the key ended up snapping in half, probably because it was like 10 degrees out. So I had to go back to the office to change rooms, and then get a new key card. My new room actually opened. It was pretty clean overall. I didn't see any major issues with it. I tried to get some sleep, but I'd wake up at about 4 a.m. to people arguing somewhere in the hotel. I genuinely didn't think it was possible to be so unbelievably loud between two people. This argument went on for what seemed like forever, until finally they shut the hell up. However, about 15 minutes later, I hear someone trying to force their way right into my room. I had both locked and latched the door, yet the door somehow was cracked open, and the latch was definitely about to give out. It would have opened fully if I didn't say, "Get the hell out." Between the cracks I just saw a dark figure, and maybe a hoodie or jacket. The instant I said that, the door closed, and the person seemingly left. Now, I would have opened the door and confronted them, but I didn't have my gun on my person at the time. I genuinely have no idea what could have happened if I was fully asleep and didn't hear them open the door. That's the first and last time of me ever staying at a Motel 6. For the love of God. No matter how much money you're saving by staying at a Motel 6, please, please, please just stay at a regular hotel. I promise you, it's worth it. My best friend is a veterinary technician, and every year we go on a trip together in the city where a conference for work is. In September 2023, it was in Aurora, Colorado, just outside of Denver. Instead of flying, I decided to rent an electric vehicle and road trip from St. Louis to Aurora. I got an electric vehicle partially because they were cheaper to rent, and I also just wanted to try one. I got to Colorado just fine. But on the second night, while waiting for my friend to get out of her seminar, I decided to charge the car in a busy hotel parking lot. I lived in Aurora for the first 8 years of my life, and again after college, so I was familiar and pretty comfortable with the area. The charging station was toward the back of the lot, and even though it was dark, it was pretty well lit. I had been charging for about 15 minutes when a vinyl-wrapped silver and purple Tesla pulled in 2 spaces away from me and started charging. But I didn't think much of it. As I'm sitting there for a few minutes, I noticed he was on the phone and kept glancing my way. Whatever. Guys are weird sometimes, and he wasn't doing anything inappropriate. About 5 minutes later, a black SUV pulls in and parks sort of diagonally to me, so he's facing me maybe about 50 feet away. Man charging his Tesla next to me went over to chat with the people in the black SUV, and they kept looking at me as well. I assumed this was who he was on the phone with earlier. At this point, I'm getting uneasy enough that I decided it's time to go, and I jumped out quickly and unplugged the car. Just as I get back in, and they notice me trying to leave, the Tesla guy sprints my way, and the SUV is racing toward me as well, trying to block me into my spot. Thankfully, with Teslas, they don't have an ignition, so you don't have to take time starting the car. As long as the key fob is in it, you just get in and go, which is what I did because I knew that I didn't have time to panic. I was about an inch from hitting the SUV and trying to squeeze out of my spot. Thankfully, I got out with no damage, and when I looked in my rear-view mirror, 3 or 4 men got out of the SUV and watched me drive away. I know that gas stations have plenty of opportunity for danger, but I really felt like a sitting duck at charging stations for the rest of the trip. I'm not sure my adrenaline has ever been so high as it was in that moment. Stay safe out there, y'all. When I first moved to New York City, I thought the hardest part would be finding an apartment. Turns out that was the easy part. The hard part was learning how to survive here, how to blend in, move fast, speak up, and not let people take advantage of you, and especially as a young woman. I'm 23 years old, and I had started working at the Madison Hotel 3 months ago. It's a medium-sized place tucked in between office buildings and coffee shops in Midtown. Not fancy, but not cheap either. It gets a lot of business travelers, tourists, and sometimes people who look like they have money but don't act like it. My job is at the front desk. I work the morning shift, which means I'm usually up by 5:30 a.m. and on my feet before the sun rises. I wear a navy blazer with a name tag, pull my curly hair into a bun, and try to smile even when I don't feel like it. The job's all right. It's steady, and I like meeting people from all over. Most of the guests are nice, some are rude, a few are weird. I learned to handle all of them the same way, politely, professionally, and with just enough distance to protect myself. But I really wasn't ready for William. He walked in on a Tuesday morning. I remember the exact day because it was raining, and he shook water off his umbrella right into the carpet. He wore a long gray coat, black gloves, and carried a brown leather briefcase that looked expensive. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with silver-streaked hair and sharp features. Mid-50s, I guessed. Checking in, he said, setting the briefcase on the counter. My name's William. I found his reservation. 3 nights, king bed breakfast included. Welcome to the Madison, Mr. William. You're in room 914, I said. Elevators are to your right. He didn't leave right away. You're new here, he said. I blinked. I am. I just started recently. You're doing great, he said, smiling. It's nice to see a friendly face in the city. I thanked him and went back to typing. He finally took his key card and walked away. That should have been it. But he came back down later that day, asking for recommendations, restaurants, museums, places to escape the noise. I gave him a few suggestions. Again, he lingered. The next morning, he brought me a coffee. I thought you might need this, he said. I was surprised. Guests didn't usually do that. I thanked him, though something about him made me uncomfortable. Still, I didn't want to be rude. Each day after that, he found a reason to come to the desk. Sometimes he asked about the weather. Sometimes he just made small talk. He always tried to turn it personal. You from here? Got a boyfriend? What do you do when you're not behind the desk? I kept my answer short. He didn't take the hint. By the 3rd day, he was waiting in the lobby in the mornings, before his meetings. He would be reading a paper, watching people, and watching me. I really like watching people, he once told me. You can learn so much about them just by observing. I smiled, tight-lipped. Is that so? Sure, he said, sipping his coffee. I've already learned a lot about you, Jessica. That made my stomach twist. I told my coworker Maria. She wrinkled her nose. That's not normal, she said. Please be careful. When William checked out the 4th day, I breathed easier. He came to the desk, suitcase rolling behind him. I'll be back soon, he said. I hoped he was just being polite. I was wrong. 2 days later, he returned. He wasn't a guest this time, just walked in and stood at the counter. Hi again, he said. Miss me? I blinked. Can I help you with something? I just wanted to say hello, he said, grinning. I was nearby. Thought I'd stop in. I forced a smile. Sir, I'm working right now. He then leaned in slightly. You don't seem happy to see me, he said. I'm just busy. I told him he left, but came back the next day. Then, 2 days after that, sometimes to just sit in the lobby. Other times, he brought gifts, tea, a notebook, a scarf. I never accepted them, but didn't leave them on the desk and walk away. I stopped being polite. I started avoiding eye contact. He noticed. One afternoon I caught him waiting outside. I left through the side door, heart pounding. That night couldn't sleep. I kept checking the hallway through the peephole in my apartment. It got worse. One Saturday, I saw him on the platform at my train station. He didn't say anything, just stood there at the other end, watching me. I rode 3 extra stops and walked home on a different day. The next day, I had told my manager David. He was concerned, but unsure of what to do. He's not a guest here anymore, he said. We could ask him to leave if he shows up again, but unless he threatens you. He paused. I felt helpless, so I started documenting everything. Dates, times, what he said, where I saw him. I kept the gifts as evidence. The final straw came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was working the desk and William walked in like he owned the place. You're overreacting. No, I said, loud and clear. I'm not. 2 officers arrived within 10 minutes. William, of course, tried to play it cool, acting like it was all a misunderstanding. But I showed them the log, the notes, the gifts. One officer asked if I wanted to file a report. Yes, I said. They escorted him out. It wasn't dramatic, but it was final. William hasn't come back since. Some nights I still feel nervous walking home. I still glance over my shoulder, but each day I feel a little stronger. Working at the front desk, I've learned how to smile when I don't want to, how to be polite when someone doesn't deserve it, and how to say no when someone crosses the line. Most of all, I've learned that keeping quiet doesn't keep you safe. Next time I'll speak up sooner. It's been about a year since I called the police on William. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Other times it feels just like last week. I still remember his face, the way he looked at me like I was something he owned. That look still shows up in my dreams. But life is better now, a lot better. After everything that happened, I decided I needed a change. I quit my job at the hotel 3 months after the incident. I couldn't sit behind that front desk anymore. Every time the doors opened, I felt a jolt of fear. I'd scanned the lobby for him. For weeks, I kept expecting him to come back. He never did, but the fear stayed with me. Quiet, heavy, sitting in my chest like a stone. I moved apartments too. Nothing fancy, just a small studio in Queens. I like it there. It's quieter, and my neighbors are friendly. There's a little grocery store around the corner, and a park where I walk in the evenings. It's really peaceful in a way Manhattan never was. I started seeing a therapist after I moved. At first I didn't really want to go. I didn't think I needed it, but talking to someone really helped. I realized I was still carrying so much fear, anger, and shame. She told me that none of it was my fault, and I think finally I believe her. I now work at a bookstore. It's a small place, locally owned, with warm lights and shelves that go up to the ceiling. The owner, Dana, is kind and funny, and she treats me like a person, not just an employee. I get to help people find stories they'll love. I get to talk about books, drink tea behind the counter, and feel safe. And I never have to wear a name tag again. Sometimes I think about who I was back then. The girl behind the front desk, trying to stay polite, trying to not cause trouble. I really wish I could go back and tell her that it's really okay to speak up. It's okay to protect yourself. That being nice to someone doesn't mean you owe them anything. I still check over my shoulder when I walk home. I keep my phone in my hand. I double lock my door every night. That part of me might never go away. I've accepted that. but I'm not scared all the time now. I'm stronger. I'm more careful, yes, but I'm also more sure of myself. I know what I will and won't allow. Know how to set boundaries, and I know that if anyone ever tries to cross them again, I'll be ready. William took something from me, a sense of ease, maybe, a bit of trust in the world, but he didn't take me. I'm still here. I'm still living. And finally, I feel like I'm in control of my own life again. So this just happened a few days ago, and it took me some time to process before I really felt ready to talk about it. Backstory: I was hired for a short trip to Ukraine as a keynote speaker and decided to book myself an extra night at a Soviet-style 4-star hotel, Ukraine, in the central square of Kiev. The Hotel Ukraine was certainly not up to date, but I thought it could be charming to stay in a classic Soviet-era luxury building, and I didn't mind the old-school furniture that much. I stay in upscale places often enough and thought, why not try something historic and different this time? I checked in at around 4 p.m., and I thought the room was an absolute steal for its size. I was on the 6th floor with a beautiful view, so I happily left my things and decided to go enjoy my night in Kyiv. Here's what happened. I arrived at Hotel Ukraine at around 11:20 p.m., and I was filming through the window of the cab as I pulled up to the hotel. I had been filming most of my trip, as I really enjoy making videos for memories, so it was not unusual that I was recording the arrival. As I got out of the cab, I looked around at the people coming into the hotel and got my first red flag. People were ridiculously intoxicated, and one man was literally collapsing out of a car being helped by 2 others. It gave me the creeps, so I took a moment at the top of the staircase and filmed the scene. The air felt weird, so I thought, at best I get into my room as quickly as possible and try to avoid any people. I walk across the large lobby to where the elevators are and press the button. I panned the camera over to the hall where you could see that I was completely alone in front of the elevator. Good, I thought. Wouldn't want to be stuck with one of those drunks. As the elevator is about to pull up and the doors open, a man in a Napa Perry coat appears from somewhere and indicates with his hand for me to enter the elevator. My phone gets a good shot of his maskless face. I walked in with him after me, and then 2 more other people entered. Another man in a gray sweater and a woman. I get both of their faces on camera. I press my floor. The woman pressed the floor. The Napa Perry man pressed the floor, and the gray sweater man did not. We ride in silence for a couple of moments. When Napa Perry guy raises his hand and starts stroking my head, he was patting me like I was a kitten. What the hell? I instantly pulled back and said out loud, "Don't touch me." He just responds with, "Okay." I looked at the other 2 people in the elevator expecting them to be shocked or at least somehow responsive. Instead, they gave me the most creepy-ass sinister smiles, grinning in a way that looks like they're pleased. On top of that, the anonymity of those smiles made it seem like they were together, I guess. They also don't appear drunk, nor are they standing funny. In fact, they seem totally sober. At that point, all of my senses started kicking in. Every scenario was playing through my head. I think back to a lot of stories that I read on Let's Not Meet and watched on Netflix, and I started coming up with all kinds of messed up scenarios for what could happen next. I am alone in Kyiv. This hotel is ancient and has no cameras nor guards on top floors. I tried to not panic, and I could only think about how I had to get to my room ASAP. The elevator doors opened, and I rushed out. Gray sweater man follows. I start speed walking down the hallway towards my room. There's a left and right hall, and he follows. As I begin to approach the corner of the hallway where my room is, I make a sharp U-turn. There's no way in hell I'll let him know what room I'm in. I'm walking back down the hallway, and he does this kind of zigzag as I walk past him that I caught on camera. I get back to the elevators and I wait, listening and praying for him to go into a room. Instead, I hear footsteps again. He was coming back towards me. I pretended to get on the phone so it wouldn't seem like I'm totally alone. As he walks up to where I'm standing at the elevators, he lingers for a moment, looking at me, and I start speeding down the hallway again towards my room. I hear his footsteps following me, so I start running. He starts running too. I dashed around the corner, and I managed to get into my room before he turned the corner to see which door was mine. I bolted shut and just stand there for a second. I hear footsteps walking from door to door, as if somebody is listening for noise behind each door. There is no peephole. I thought about what to do next, and then I went to the living room where the phone is to call security. I told him what happened, and his first reaction is, "And who are you?" He says in slightly aggressive Russian, "I'm a guest in this hotel. I'm here alone, and the man is following me." He cuts me off. I understand. I'm on the way. He told me I stood there for a couple of moments. I could hear noises still coming from outside the door, but I was a bit paralyzed. I called back the security. "I took care of it," he says. "Great, thanks," I replied, and then hung up. Actually, not freaking great. This is insane. What the hell is going on? What was that even? Why was that dude petting me? Why the hell were they smiling? So creepy. Were they together? Where did they even all come from? If I'm standing alone in the hole, what if they come back after midnight? He knows the corridor I'm in. It's only 4 rooms. What if this is some kind of ploy? What if the guard is in on it? What did he take care of exactly? I had a million questions just racing through my head. Aside from the logic, my entire body was tingling in spidey senses that I had to get out of that hotel immediately. I thought maybe if I filled the tub and soaked my legs a bit, I can stop shaking. I went to the sink to wash my hands. It was totally clogged. It wouldn't drain the water at all. I went to the bed to lay down for a moment, pulled back the sheets. Hair pulled them back more. Crumbs. A sesame seed. More hair and crumbs. I zoomed in on all of this with my phone, which still hasn't stopped filming. I called one of my best friends, MJ, and totally unnerved, told her what's happening. She instantly went into action plan mode and told me to call my employer immediately and tell them to get me the hell out of that hotel. I did so, and the plan was to call the reception to get security to escort me downstairs so I can get the hell out of this hotel. This is where it gets more weird. I called reception and began telling her everything that happened. She was very nice and polite, and she first tried to calm me down by saying, "Well, maybe they were drunk." I told her, regardless if they are or aren't being chased and petted is not okay, and that I need to leave because that whole vibe is really off and something just doesn't feel right. Her demeanor then changed. A couple of minutes of anxiety attacks go by and the phone rings again. Security is on his way. He told me that you called him before and told him what happened. He told me that he checked your floor and found the men that you're talking about, she said. I paused. Men, as in plural. You're telling me the guard found multiple men on my floor? I asked. Yes, he found them. They were just confused about what floor was theirs. He personally escorted them back into their rooms. She replied, I'm really sorry, I said, but I have a hard time believing that they were confused about their floor. Confused people don't chase somebody through a hallway. At that point, I didn't even have the energy to unwrap with her that only one of them followed me off the elevator. How and when did that turn into a damn group? I called security not even 2 minutes after entering my room. As I'm on the phone with her, I hear the code knock that the security is there. Miranda opened the door. His entire attitude at first is to play everything down and tell me they were just drunk and confused and that I really shouldn't take it personally. I asked him about the petting in the elevator and the chasing. I told him I recorded everything on camera. He falls quiet. The rest of the way to the reception he spends telling me not to worry and that I'm almost out of the hotel. I arrive at the reception. Masha, I exclaimed to the woman. Yes, don't worry. You're safe with me now, are her first words as her eyes darted at the security guard. That was super weird, I thought. We're going to call your taxi and get you out of this hotel right now, she continues. At this point, it's really daunting on me that this is not her first rodeo. I thought back to the phone call in the room and how quickly she snapped into protocol and how flawless it all went. It hit me that there is no possible way that I'm the first woman to be in this situation, given how quickly she had started to take me seriously, while the guard continued to downplay the whole thing. I called my Uber and Masha, and just continued to stand there for some time. You know, you should have never booked this hotel, she says to me. People kept saying this too, me all day, that it's old school and Soviet style. But I thought I could have a charm, as it's on the main square and has an amazing view, I reply. Yes, I can understand that. But this hotel, Hotel Ukraine, it is not a place for a girl like you. She says, well, what do you mean? I ask. It's just. Her eyes fall to the floor and she looks at her feet nervously. This hotel has strange people, and I'm so sorry that you experienced this. Sadly, I can't control them. She continues, eyes shifting weird towards the guard again. Well, damn, I don't even want to start analyzing what that means. She then offers me a bottle of water. She brings out a full glass and places the bottle on the desk. And once I take 2 big sips of the lukewarm water, I realize that the bottle is still sealed. Well, double hell. Last thing I needed now is to be drugged. I swear when I tell you that in moments like this, every sense of security and safety is out the door. My car finally arrives, and I ran out of that hotel, not looking back for even a split second. I already arranged the new hotel while in the room earlier, so I had a safe place to head. It has been a few days now since everything happened, and I decided to proceed with filing a police report. I also requested a refund for that night via my travel agency, who knows about the whole situation. They received a reply today from the Hotel Ukraine denying that any of this happened. On top of that, they say they have no receptionist by the name of Masha. They refused the entire story. Unfortunately for them, I have everything filmed on my iPhone, including Mattia's name tag. I'm still pretty shaken up, but I'm sure as hell not letting them gaslight me, especially given that I filmed everything. Today, I sent them an email detailing the whole thing and my next steps, asking them kindly to not make it more complicated and issue my refund. I think the shady things go on in this hotel, and I just got lucky. Solo female travelers, do not book Hotel Ukraine. Travel a lot for work, not glamorous travel. No beachfront resorts or first-class upgrades, just boring gray suit business trips, sales meetings, client lunches, conferences where the coffee tastes like burnt plastic. Because of that, I usually try to save the company some money, skip the nice hotels, go for the cheaper places. It makes accounting happy, and it keeps my expenses pretty low. But after what happened at this one hotel, I don't do that anymore. It was just outside Rochester, New York. I had a 2-day training to run for some junior reps. I was only supposed to be there for 3 nights. I googled a few hotel options. I saw that this one hotel was about half the price of the Marriott, and figured why not. It didn't look that bad online. Clean enough. Vintage charm. The listing said. The picture showed an old red brick building with ivy crawling up the sides. Cozy looking rooms, a little dated but fine. It wasn't fine. I pulled into the parking lot around 9 p.m. It was already dark. The hotel set back from the road a little, surrounded by crooked trees and sagging power lines. The neon sign buzzed weakly. Inside the lobby was dim and quiet. The air smelled like old carpet and something sweet, maybe air freshener, trying to cover up mildew. Behind the front desk sat an elderly woman in a pink cardigan. She had thin white hair pulled into a tight bun and glasses that made her eyes look too big. Her name tag said Marla. Mr. Miller, she said before I could even speak. I blinked. Yeah, that's me. I've been expecting you, she said, smiling warmly. Equals that struck me as a little strange. but I chalked it up to good hospitality. She handed me a brass key attached to a wooden tag that read 209, a real key, not a card. "You're up on the second floor, end of the hall," she said. "Let me know if you need anything at all. I'm always here." She said that last part slowly, like she really wanted me to remember it. I forced a polite smile and thanked her. Maybe she was just old-fashioned. Room 209 looked just like the photos, worn but clean. Beige walls, faded blue curtains, a small bed with a thin quilt. The TV was one of those old boxy ones that belonged in a basement. Still, the bathroom was clean, the lights worked, and the sheets smelled okay. I changed into sweats, answered a few emails, and got into bed. At 9:35 p.m., the phone rang. I jumped a little. It was the room phone, the old rotary kind with a real bell. I didn't even know those still worked. Came from Marla's voice, soft and slow. "Yeah, everything's fine," I said. "Thanks. Wonderful," she said. Then there was a click. I shook my head and hung up. A little weird, but okay. Maybe they don't get a lot of guests. Maybe she's just overly friendly. The next day I was out from 8 to 5. Long, boring meetings in a beige office park. When I got back, the hallway to my room was dead silent, like the hotel was empty. When I opened the door, I noticed something new. A plate of cookies sat on the nightstand. Old mill raisin, maybe? Still one. There was no note. I hadn't asked for anything. I picked one up, sniffed it, and then set it back down. Something about it felt ... off. I didn't eat them. That night at exactly 9:35, the phone rang again. "Mr. Miller." Marla's voice came through, soft and sweet. "Yup, I'm still here. I just wanted to say goodnight," she said. "Did you pause for a second? How did you get into my room?" I asked. She chuckled. "Well, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't come into my room again." Another pause. "Of course." Then the call ended. The next morning, I stopped at the desk on my way out. Marla wasn't there. Some younger guy was filling in, tall, pale, bored-looking. I told him calmly that I didn't want any more calls or surprise gifts in my room. He didn't seem surprised. "Yeah," he said. "I'll let her know. Does she do this a lot?" He just shrugged. "I don't know, man. She's been here forever," he said. That night I locked my door tight. I even wedged a chair under the handle just in case. I kept the TV on while I worked on my laptop. Around 10, I muted it. The hotel was completely silent. No footsteps, no voices, just the occasional groan of the old building settling. Then there were 3 soft knocks on my door. I held still, waited. "Mr. Miller," came a voice. "It's Marla, just checking on you." I stayed silent. Another knock. "I just want to be sure you're okay." I tiptoed to the door and looked through the peephole. She was just standing there in the same pink sweater, holding her hands together like she was praying. She didn't leave for like 5 minutes. I didn't sleep very much that night. The next morning I booked a different hotel, but it was fully booked into the following day, so I had to survive just one more night. That night I kept all the lights on, slept in my clothes, sat in bed with my back against the wall, watching TV with the volume low. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I must have dozed off, and then something cold woke me up. It wasn't a sound, it wasn't a touch, it was a presence. I opened my eyes. There was a shadow standing over my bed. Now at first, I couldn't move. My whole body just went stiff. The room was dark, but the stray light outside gave me just enough glow to see the outline. A woman standing perfectly still. I jumped out of bed and scrambled across the floor, slamming my hand on the light switch. I clicked the switch and light flooded the room. Margot was standing by the bed still as a statue. I stared at her, panting, my heart racing. "What the hell are you doing in here?" I demanded. She blinked slowly, like she didn't even understand the question. She just smiled. "I checked into the Marriott downtown at 3 a.m. still shaking. The front desk clerk didn't even ask questions. I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost. Since then, I've stuck to Hiltons, Marriotts, and Westons. If it costs more, fine. I don't care. Cheap hotels just aren't worth it. Not when you wake up to someone watching you sleep.